please stand for the national anthem? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good evening. Welcome to Peabody City Hall. My name is Tom Walsh. I'm the state representative from the 12th Essex District, which includes City Hall, and also for a couple more months, a city councilor as well. It is my privilege tonight to introduce Representative Ted Speliotis, who is my colleague, who represents the other piece of Peabody, and we work very closely together, and he is going to offer a few words. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you. As Representative Walsh said, my name is Ted Speliotis, and for a number of years I represented downtown Peabody. Now I represent West Peabody, which is everything beyond Route 1, Danvers, and half of Middleton. But you're not here for us. You're here for the senator, and you're here to talk about issues not just affecting us, but the entire nation. And it's a very important night. It's a very unique opportunity you have, and a unique opportunity that the senator has. I do, and I can't resist saying this, when Senator Markey left the U.S. Congress to become our senator, his first day as a U.S. senator, not with any responsibility in Washington, he chose this hall to come and visit the city of Peabody, to be the very first stop as a U.S. senator. So I'd like to be very appreciative that he has chosen again to come back to Peabody and how important it is. And you can applaud because it really is something. It's something because the city of Peabody is unique, as all of you know. It brings everybody together. It's a welcoming community of all diversity and all kinds of people, from those that are on the edge of life to those that are doing extremely well. And you can see it as you drive through the neighborhoods and as you walk through the streets. And Senator Markey knows that, and he understands that. But my job here tonight is to introduce a senator of a little lesser caliber, but not any less skilled. Is that okay? Can I say that? And that's our state senator, someone we know very well, someone we know doesn't need a roadmap for Peabody, doesn't need to look at a GPS to know where she ought to be in the city, because she knows every single street in the city. So we're grateful to have our senator and an opportunity to have a great delegation in Representative Walsh and Senator Joan Lovely, and it's her job. So.
Thank you, Representative. I'm so pleased to be here tonight to offer very brief remarks because we do want to get Senator Markey up here to offer his remarks and then engage you in a question and answer because you have a lot on your minds tonight. And I know we want to give as much time for that. So I'm just so pleased to be here to say a few words about Ed Markey and just the impact he's had across the Commonwealth and certainly in our district. He's had a very positive, amazing impact. One of the bills that he actually sponsored that I really want to talk about quickly is about maternal mental health and postpartum depression. I actually chair the Postpartum Depression Commission at the State House, and Senator Markey was one of the key sponsors for a very important piece of legislation at the national level to really give this national attention. I just want to say thank you, Ed, for doing that for every mother across the Commonwealth. So it's with my pleasure that I actually get to introduce Mayor Betancourt, a really true leader here in Peabody, to sit and to be in this beautiful historic hall tonight, to see the transformation that Peabody is undergoing under his leadership and that of the City Council is nothing short of amazing, and I'm so blessed to be part of that partnership. So if I could ask Mayor Betancourt to please come forward and offer remarks.
Well, good evening, and it's truly my pleasure to welcome all of you to the Wigan Auditorium here at Peabody City Hall. I'm joined by a number of city officials, and I did want to recognize them for being with me today. From our City Council, we have Ed Charist, Ward 4 Councilor, Peter McGinn, our Ward 2 Councilor, Ann Manning Martin, our Councilor at Large, and Jim Mitsoulas, our Ward 3 Councilor. Thank you for joining me today. In addition, our school committee members, Beverly Griffin Dunn and Joe Amico. Thank you both for being here. So I'm very proud of the city of Peabody. It's a wonderful community. It truly is a working class city. It's a melting pot community and filled with caring, hardworking people. And I see many of them today here at the town hall, people that have been a part of our city, working to better our community. It's great to see all of you here today to join us. To me, this is democracy in action, a chance to have a town hall meeting, to talk to Senator Markey, hear what's taking place, answer some questions. It's truly a wonderful opportunity for me as a city leader, but for all of us to learn a little bit more about what's going on here. And to have it at the Wigan Auditorium where we've hosted in the past, we've had our city council meetings, our school committee meetings, all of our town meetings take place here. This used to be an opera house. We've actually had boxing and wrestling matches here in the past. Thankfully, those don't happen very often. Maybe a couple council meetings that came close. But it's great to have all of you here today. And it's truly my pleasure to introduce and welcome up to the stage Senator Markey. I can tell you he's called me numerous times to see what's going on in our community, what's taking place in our community health program over at Peabody City Hall, Peabody High School. Talk to me about the community development block grants, what's going on in that community with the opioid crisis. Senator Markey has been there time and time again, and he's always looking and try to find ways to help the city of Peabody, and I'm very grateful for that. So with that, my pleasure to introduce today Senator Ed Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Peabody, for being out here tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you. It is so great to be here with all of you and to be introduced by the former great point guard for the Holy Cross basketball team, who is still the point guard for the city of Peabody, making sure that this city is run like a clock every single day. So we thank you, Mr. Mayor, for all of your great leadership on a daily, weekly, yearly basis for this great city. To Senator Lovely, thank you so much, and thank you for your pioneering work in mental health, in the public health of our country. It's my honor to have you here this evening. To Ted Speliotis, Ted, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your great work for the city and for the Commonwealth. We're also joined here tonight by Sheriff Coppinger, and by District Attorney Blodgett, who is standing right over here. And, I work with both of them on the issue of opioids, of this epidemic, which is like the plague, the modern-day plague in our country. And I just want to tell you that you have the national leaders up here on the North Shore. That's really where the battlefield is when the district attorney comes down to see me. He's the head of the district attorneys in terms of putting together the strategy for us to be able to deal with this issue. There really isn't anything else that's comparable. So I just want to thank you, Mr. Sheriff, for being here. Thank you for the great job you do. And thank you, District Attorney Blodgett, for everything that you do for this county, but for the state and for the country. You are a national leader on these issues. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. So we also have Representative Dan Cahill, who is here. Dan is right over here. And, excuse me? Mayor Michael Cahill, what am I saying? I am sorry. They said that he was going to be here. They said he was going to be here. But over here from Beverly, Mayor Michael Cahill, who give a round of applause to Michael Cahill. Michael Cahill had Ted Speliotis as a student in school, and the mayor is doing a fantastic job in representing Beverly and making sure that this whole area is humming like the economy that it should be. And we also have with us the great former congressman from this district sitting right in the back, Michael Harrington. So Michael, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. So this is an incredible gathering. Thank you for coming out here this evening. I think I will start with the opioid issue. I'll just begin with it. We have in Massachusetts in the year 2016, 2,000 people who died from an opioid overdose. Now, upwards of 75% of them have been identified as having fentanyl in their system. By the way, over here, Representative Walsh, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you so much for being here and in. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was able to come up here and campaign with Representative Walsh, who decided counterintuitively to return to the state legislature, having already served up here, and he's doing a fantastic job in the state legislature. And I just wanted to, make sure that I recognized you as well. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. The opioid crisis, 2,000 people died last year, 75% with fentanyl in their blood system. So this is no small issue. It is the plague that is arriving. So far, President Trump has not declared it a national emergency. We know that we must. The sheriff, the district attorney, the mayors, the state representative, state senator, they are all working on this issue as hard as is humanly possible, but we have to ensure that we give the tools to the people who need them. When we were battling the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, if they had been successful, if John McCain had not gone thumbs down on that, 2.8 million Americans would have lost coverage for addiction treatment in our country. It would have been a complete and total disaster for our state and for the entire country. Because, let's be honest, A vision without funding is an hallucination. If you do not provide the treatment for families who have someone with an addiction problem, then unfortunately there is a high tendency for a real problem to develop. So from my perspective, I put it right at the top of the list. It's why we had to make sure that the Affordable Care Act was not repealed, and why, moving forward, we have to ensure that we not only keep the Affordable Care Act intact, but continue to improve it so that we do provide the hope, the help for families that are in need. Number two, on gun control. What we just saw in Las Vegas is yet one more example of why we have to ensure that the NRA stands for not relevant anymore in American politics. We have to ensure that these bump stocks are banned. A device which can turn a semi-automatic weapon into a machine gun was never intended under the Second Amendment of a well-regulated militia to allow indiscriminately for individuals to be able to purchase these guns and to use them on the streets of America when they were really only intended to be used in the battlefields of the planet. So those have to be banned. We have to prohibit people from buying a gun on Instagram. We cannot allow anymore for people to be able to go on the internet and buy a gun so it moves from an Instagram turning into an Insta-gun. That has to be prohibited. 94% of all Americans want to see background checks implemented in our country. 94% of all Americans want a background check so we know who's purchasing these guns. That's what I hear over and over again from the sheriff, from the police chiefs, from the district attorney. Everyone continues to say the exact same thing, and yet the NRA has this Republican leadership in a vise-like grip down in Washington. And we have to make sure that we stop this, from continuing, so that the more than 30,000 people a year who die from gun violence are protected from an unnecessary death. Massachusetts has the lowest gun fatality rate in the country. We have dropped it 60% over the last 20 years since we put the toughest gun laws in the country on the books. We ensure that the police chiefs have a role in determining who gets to be able to purchase a gun in a city or town, and that's the way we're going to have to fight to make sure that it happens all across the United States of America. This is a battle post-Las Vegas that we cannot stop. Assault weapons should be banned. These unlimited magazines that really only belong on battlefields, they should be banned. We have to make sure that we have a battle this year and next, going into the election, on these issues at the highest possible level. Number three, climate change. Today, the President, through his head of the Environmental Protection Agency, decided that no longer were they going to try to reduce greenhouse gases in the utilities of the United States. Under President Obama, there was going to be a 30% reduction in greenhouse gases between now and the year 2030. Today, Scott Pruitt, the head of the EPA, said that from his perspective, today begins the end of the war on coal. So there are 50,000 coal miners in the United States of America right now. He says that everything he does is going to protect those 50,000 coal miners, including no longer having a rule to reduce greenhouse gases. Well, pick a number in your mind. How many new solar workers were hired in the United States in the year 2016? How many new workers got hired? All right, you got the number? Here's the answer. 50,000 new people got hired in the solar industry last year alone, matching all coal miners in the United States. And who are these solar workers? Well, they're people who grew up on roofs. They're electricians. They're blue-collar workers. And this is the fastest growing, expanding part of the American economy. It is a blue-collar job generation engine. There are going to be 500,000 people in the wind and solar industry by the year 2020. 500,000 people. 50,000 coal miners, 500,000 people in wind and solar. The president is saying, one, I don't believe in science, and two, I don't care about all those blue-collar jobs that are going to be created. We have in Massachusetts right now 100,000 people in the clean energy sector, 100,000 jobs. This is the growth sector. These are where the new jobs are coming from. The president is in denial. We've had 16 of the 17 warmest years in American history since the year 2000. We have hurricane after hurricane after hurricane after hurricane with intensifying power hitting the United States of America. Every time you watch the Weather Channel, Jim Cantori is telling you how warm the water is off of the coast, which fuels these storms and makes them ever more intense, ever more powerful. When we had the 112 inches of snow back in 3 or 4 years ago, that was because they were registering temperatures in January 21 degrees warmer than normal, which just makes it much more likely that a Gronkowski-like spike of snow is going to come down on us because of all of the additional precipitation which is created. And so this issue of climate change is something that goes right to the heart of what we have to ensure that we put in place to protect the planet. The planet is running a fever. There are no emergency rooms for planet, so we have to engage in the preventative care. And we can do it. We can save all of creation by engaging in massive job creation, of having these new clean energy jobs be created in our country. Moreover, the president is now talking about rolling back the fuel economy standards for the vehicles which we drive, which is a law which I was able to get passed in 2007, which is still the largest single reduction in greenhouse gases by a single law that any country in the world has ever passed. All right? Now, President Obama used that to increase fuel economy standards to 54.5 miles per gallon by the year 2025. That backs out 3 million barrels of oil a day that won't have to go up into the atmosphere. The president is now saying he wants to roll that back as well. Front page of the New York Times today. China, it says on the front page of the New York Times, is now poised to take control of the all-electric vehicle market for the next generation. They sold 3 times as many all-electric vehicles in China last year as we sold in the United States. So in the same way that we were the pioneers in wind, we were the pioneers in solar, we were the pioneers in all-electric vehicles, with a president who doesn't understand the opportunities for job creation that these sectors present, then we have, unfortunately, a risk to our long-term national and international leadership on all of these issues. And number 4, as I want to hear all of you and your questions, number 4, North Korea. I am the lead Democrat on the Asia subcommittee, and I took a delegation including Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland and Senator Jeff Markey of Oregon to Korea, Japan, and China in the last week of August. Here's what President Moon said to us, that it is not possible to fight a second Korean war, that there are 8,000 North Korean rockets right in the DMZ, right on the other side of the DMZ, ready just to be launched towards Seoul, towards the incredibly densely populated area around Seoul, 30 million people. If all it was a conventional war, 1 million people could be dead in the first 48 hours. If it went nuclear, it could become catastrophic very quickly, not just for Korea, but for Japan, for Guam, and ultimately, potentially, for the United States of America as well. We have 200,000 people and their 200,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and their families there in Korea. So this could become a catastrophe for the United States of America. We have a president who is saying he does not believe in diplomacy. He does not want his Secretary of State to be trying to negotiate a deal with the Koreans. He almost seems allergic to arms control. It almost seems as though he's moving in a rapid pace towards a confrontation that could go kinetic, could go military with the North Koreans, which could quickly spin out of control. So that's why I've introduced legislation, which they wrote a story about in the New York Times today, which calls upon the Congress to reclaim its authority, so that it would serve as a check on a president to be able to launch nuclear weapons towards another country if we have not been attacked by that other country with nuclear weapons. Because if that was the case, and Congress did not have, if there was no check on a president, that means that one human being, Donald Trump, would be the decider as to whether or not a nuclear war would begin. And I believe that we need to have Congress reassert its authority in the same way that we need to reassert our authority on the authorization for the use of military force in the Middle East, in the fighting of al-Qaeda and ISIS. It's now spreading from country to country, and we need to have a way in which the Congress is participating. So on each one of these issues, it really goes to kind of the core of who we are, what we represent here in Massachusetts, and what I believe our responsibility is down in Washington representing you. So I serve with Elizabeth Warren in the Senate, and we try very hard to partner on all of these issues, and I love working with Seth Moulton in the same way in the House of Representatives, because it's our job to fight hard for what you believe in down in Washington. So we have microphones here on either side, and I would be more than willing to, take questions from you about anything that you might want to talk about. Vanessa, can you just hold up that microphone? Anyone want to come down here? And what?
I'm going to ask him. That's me. Would he be willing to sign that?
Yeah. Okay.
One thing that you didn't mention is the tax plan that Trump
Thank
is
you.
proposing.
The tax plan.
And it sounds like the people at the bottom are going to pay more than people at the top. That's nothing new, but can you help us understand what he's proposing?
Thank you. You are so right. I should have opened with the tax plan as well. The tax plan, as it has been outlined, because we don't know all the details yet, but as it's been outlined, it's Robin Hood in reverse. 80% of the tax break goes to the upper 1 percentile. Can I say that again? 80% of the tax break goes to the upper 1 percentile. Let me further flesh it out for you. The Republicans passed a budget. They passed their budget out of the Budget Committee in the middle of last week. In that budget, they cut Medicaid by $1 trillion. They take a machete to Medicaid. They cut Medicare by $473 billion. They take a machete to Medicare as well. So when you look at it, it's $1 trillion cut in Medicaid, $473 billion cut in Medicare. You add that up, and guess what? It comes out to $1.5 trillion cut. And how big is their tax break? Well, it's so big that it consumes all of those savings, as the Republicans would describe it, in Medicare and Medicaid, and it still leaves room for another $1.5 trillion worth of deficit to be run up, although they have shed many crocodile tears about their concern about the deficit over the years. When it comes to tax breaks, there is no check that they allow to be put in place in order to block them from putting them on the books for the upper 1 percentile. So thank you for raising that question about this tax. And one of their goals is to repeal the deduction for state and local taxes. What would that mean in this congressional district? It would mean actually 39% of all the people in this the households in this congressional district would actually pay higher taxes if the state and local deductions are removed. So that just goes right to the heart of why we have to stop this, because the people in this room will be amongst those who actually see a tax increase, not a tax decrease, under the Trump tax proposal as he has propounded it thus far. So, over here, yes.
Senator Markey, I was privileged to be on the Get Out to Vote poster for you, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to autograph it.
I will be glad to. I will be glad. Can you bring that up to me? Yeah, I'll be glad to do it, yeah. I think I think I can do this. Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your... We're here in the birthplace of democracy, so anyone who helps get out the vote in a world where Donald Trump is trying to figure out a way to suppress the vote, and actively doing so by trying to take the voter rolls of many states and make it more difficult for people to be able to vote. So that's a good thing, and so thank you for being here. Yes, sir.
Hello, Senator Markey. My name is David Berman. I'm in Marblehead. I followed your work very closely when you were in the House on energy and telecom. I don't know if you're working on energy still in the Senate.
I am.
One of the things that keeps me up at night is I think that the disastrous situation with the power grid in Puerto Rico ought to be a wake-up call, because a lot of indications are that the mainland power grid is equally as fragile. We only have to look as far as the massive 2003 blackout that occurred in much of the Northeast when a wire got hot and touched a tree and blacked out a third of the country. I think the grid is vulnerable to terrorism, sabotage. A couple of well-armed drones could bring down the entire power grid. We see what happens in the winter when an ice storm destroys transmission towers and leaves regions without power for weeks. The military, as you're probably aware, the military has embarked on a program to protect itself through the use of microgrids, combining solar energy, solar panels, and microturbines. And it seemed to me that that might be a better way to approach Puerto Rico, rather than try to rebuild transmission lines across mountains and then use as a test bed for the United States. What do you think?
Okay, I like your idea a lot. Okay, I think that in part because of the devastation in Puerto Rico, and by the way, they're Americans, which is something I think that eludes the Trump administration, that we have a real opportunity here to do something very good in the electricity sector. That is that we can take their antiquated grid, look at wind, look at solar, look at energy efficiency, look at strategies by which we can decentralize the generation of electricity, take their natural advantage, which is that it's sunny almost every day of the year, and couple it with the collapse in the price of solar in our country. And if we are going to send in, which we're going to fight to do, billions of dollars in relief effort to try to create a strategy by which we would then say that this money should be used by the utility as a way of not replicating something that was constructed in 1938, which is probably what we would just witness to seeing being destroyed. I think Thomas Alva Edison would have recognized the grid in Puerto Rico. And let's move it to the 21st century the way that we have for these devices which we have in our pockets. This is beyond the imagination of Alexander Graham Bell. Well, that's what we should now do for electrical generation with regard to Thomas Alva Edison. Let's move to these modern technologies, decentralize, make it much easier for that island to be able to withstand sustainably the next hurricane that comes through. I'd like your idea. Thank you so much for being here, sir. Yes, right over here.
How are you doing, Senator Markey? I'm Matt Trainer from Lawrence, Massachusetts. I had a question about net neutrality, and it was, do you protect, do you support keeping strong net neutrality protections under Title II? And
yes, I do.
You fight to keep it in place, even if against watered-down legislation from the Congress?
Yes, I do. So let me just explain what net neutrality is, okay, for everybody in the room. The kind of the core personality of the Internet is its openness in its architecture. It is something that allows for anyone to be able to speak. It allows for entrepreneurs to start up new ideas, new applications, new technologies, to be able to reach all 320 million people in the United States and most of the rest of the world. And a huge chunk of all of the entrepreneurial activity that goes on in the United States is in this Internet sector. So, for example, and thank you for asking the question. My father's a graduate of Lawrence High School, by the way. In 2015, 2016, one half of all venture capital in the United States went into the Internet and software sector. 50% of all venture capital fund. Simultaneously, the big cable companies, telephone companies, they spent $87 billion in upgrading the fiber optic and all of their networks. So that's a nice balance. On the one hand, you have all the entrepreneurs with all these new ideas that want to get online and be able to create new jobs. And on the other hand, you have the bigger companies, and they're still investing because they're making a lot of money with the people who are using it. So that balance is something that works well for Massachusetts. We are kind of the pluperfect form of what net neutrality helps, which is hundreds, thousands of little companies whose names we do not know are in real estate in Beverly, in Peabody, in community after community all across the state. And young people want to come here because they feel that we are kind of the center, along with Silicon Valley, of this revolution, but it also creates jobs in all the other states. So keeping net neutrality on the books is central to our job growth. It's central to encouraging young people to keep dreaming, to keep moving towards using their digital skill set to continue to create jobs and work in that sector. That's where young people want to go. That's what net neutrality is all about. We can't allow it to be shut down by the broadband barons. We have to make sure that it remains open, and I'm going to fight every single day to do something about it. 22 million Americans have now signed a petition to the FCC saying, keep your hands off of the Internet. Thank you so much for being here, sir. Yes. Right over here.
Good evening, Senator. My name is Pam Payne. I'm from Peabody. Yes, Pam Payne from Peabody. My question to you tonight is, I am a member of a group called We the People Massachusetts, and there are We the People groups throughout the country, actually. And what we are working on is getting a constitutional amendment to overturn the decision made by the Supreme Court years ago now, several years ago now, the Citizens United decision, which basically said that corporations are people, and we don't believe that corporations should have the same rights as people. People are people. And may I ask what your opinion might be of something like that?
Okay, that's a great question. Here's my view. With the exception of the Dred Scott decision, Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission is the single worst decision in the history of the Supreme Court of the United States. It basically says that unlimited amounts of undisclosed money can just pour into the political system. And it's distorting democracy. It allows for the voices of a very small segment of the upper 1% to be the dominant voices in our society. This is just the opposite of what happened in these cities and towns on the North Shore in 1775 as they were rising up. This is a town meeting form of democracy which we thrive under, and what is happening is that the Citizens United decision is absolutely destroying democracy as we know it in our country. You can see the polarization, you can feel the difficulty it takes in doing anything possible. You can see how the Koch brothers want us to pull out of the Paris Agreement. The Koch brothers want the country to no longer have a clean power plan for the utilities. The Koch brothers don't want Cape Wind to be built so that we have wind power off of our shore. The Koch brothers and people like them are now basically in possession of unlimited amounts of political power in our society. And so for me, I want to see Citizens United overturned, and I want to fight for a Supreme Court of the United States, which is why elections are so important, that we can have justices on the Supreme Court who can finally recognize the corrosive impact it is having in our country. So thank you. I am with you 100%. There's no issue that is more important because it affects every issue. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Joshua Rizzo. I'm here with the Student Government Association at North Shore Community College.
Beautiful.
Senator Markey, currently New York, Tennessee, Rhode Island, and Oregon offer tuition-free community college.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel this might be a possibility for the over 15 Massachusetts community colleges? What insights and information might you be able to share relating to this issue? Thank you.
Okay. This is a big point here. This question about community college and the pathway that it plays in making it possible for young people to be able to realize their dreams. My father was a milkman for the Hood Milk Company. We lived in Malden. My mother didn't work. My father worked very hard. No one works harder than a milkman getting up at 4 in the morning to get the milk bottles on people's doorsteps. His 3 sons living in that house all went to Boston College Law School. It's $70,000 to go to Boston College now. So for each child, that would be 70 times 7, 490,000 times 3 kids. It would be $1.5 million to be able to get the education which my brothers and I were able to receive. Well, that's a different world than we live in today, huh? A kid living in that same house doesn't have access to that kind of revenue. So from my perspective, I think that ultimately we have to move to free community college. Okay, I just think in the same way that that we now allow kids to go to kindergarten, grammar school, and high school for free, that we're going to have to now in the modern world say that community college is in the same category, that we have to find a way to finance it, that we can't deny a kid the access to their ability to maximize their God-given abilities. And if we don't give it, if we don't do it, we're going to have a lot of kids who don't get to go to the school or don't get to go to the take advantage of the opportunities which otherwise would be available to them. Increasingly, here's what's happening, and it's good. It's a good story. But a kid who's growing up in a blue-collar community can't afford to go to the school that they were admitted to. So you can be like number 5 in your high school class. You get into a very good school whose name everybody knows. But you can't afford $70,000. So where do you go? You go to UMass Lowell. You go to UMass Amherst. You go to Salem State. You go to UMass Dartmouth. You have to go to a lower cost but high quality school that's a public education, right? That's just the reality of today. So the kids who come from families that have more money, they get to take the spot at that school, even though the kid might have had higher grades and a better SAT score, but the kid couldn't take advantage of it. But it's only because we have this public higher education system that these kids can stay in and we can educate them. And I think increasingly, and I thank you for raising the question, that this issue of free community college is going to be a central part of our economic strategy so that everyone gets the education they need in order to help themselves, help their families, but help our economy grow. And if we don't do it, I think it's going to hurt our country in the long run. We just have to be realistic right now about the cost of college. It is out of control. Thank you for getting up. Appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Nancy Houghton. I'm from Beverly. I'm on the executive board for the Massachusetts chapter of ADAPT, and I know you've had plenty of contact with my group as far as the Community First Choice option and the Disability Integration Act. But that life expectancy is becoming longer and longer every year. People are going to start needing extended care, whether it be warehoused or nursing home or in their own homes. And I ask you to continue to give us the support that you have as far as backing us up on the CFC and the DIA. And please just keep telling your other buddies they got to vote for this.
Okay, thank you.
Keep Trump out of our health care.
Okay, good. So extended care is a key question. So here's what happened. This is an old story. It doesn't happen, thank God, as much as it used to happen. But my grandmother died when my mother was a junior in high school. And in the old days, before FDR, girls was the social safety net. She'd just have to stay home. So there were 5 sisters, so my mother just had to stay home, even though she was president of the senior class and valedictorian. She just had to stay home to take care and raise the younger sisters. She was essentially, you know, my grandfather's off the boat from Ireland. There's my mother. She has to raise the kids, right? So she married, ultimately, John Markey from Lawrence, who grew up in a triple-decker up in Lawrence. And she was like 3 years older than my father. She married the milkman, the valedictorian and the milkman. That was the living room that my brothers and I grew up in. And my father was kind of more monosyllabic in terms of explaining things to us. My mother could go polysyllabic, but we understood my father very clearly. When my mother got Alzheimer's, my father said, "You know, Eddie, this disease is so terrible that the strength of your brain doesn't determine whether or not you get it. And if it did, then your mother would be taking care of me right now," meaning my father would have it. That would be his joke. Huh? That's how terrible this disease is. But my father, he had, you know, a milkman's arms are the size of your thighs. They're lifting 6 milk bottles all day long. So he kept my mother in the living room. She's 78, 80, 82, 84, 86, 88, 90. A milkman's arm is able to do it. Now, how much money did he save Medicaid by doing that? How much money did he save on nursing home costs by doing that? So I learned a great lesson from my father. And by the way, as each year went by, my father became a greater and greater man in my eyes. Huh? Wow. Can you imagine that? Every day, day after day, 14 years in a row in the living room. So I introduced a bill a year after my mother passed away, 1999, and it's called Independence at Home. And I actually got it built into the Affordable Care Act. And here's what it says. If the nursing home and the hospital and the doctors and the nurse practitioners can figure out a way of keeping you at home and helping the family at home, then they can make money doing it, but by keeping you in the home. not turning this into some kind of warehousing of America. And by the way, 15 million baby boomers are going to have Alzheimer's. Say that again. 15 million baby boomers are going to have it. So your issue is right on the money. Donald Trump wanting to cut the research budget at NIH, that's crazy. NIH is really the National Institutes of Hope. It gives hope to families that we can find the cure for diseases. Huh? So that is a pilot project that has now been tested by the Department of Health and Human Services. They had an analog program over at the VA. And so my hope is that we can introduce that into the medical system, where families get the help at home, and that if federal dollars are being spent, it's not just from a Medicaid to put someone in a nursing home or some hospital room, that it's to keep them at home, and then to let the other institutions make their money, but only with the family being at first. So I agree with you 100%. It's very personal for me. My mother used to say, whenever my mother was disappointed in me growing up, she would say, Eddie, we're going to donate your brain to Harvard Medical School as a completely unused human organ. You have to learn how to work smarter and not harder. And it's a lot smarter to help the families to deal with it than to spend hundreds and billions of dollars for nursing home bills out of the taxpayers' money. So I thank you. I'm with you all the way. And thank you for raising your voice here tonight. Thank you. Right over here.
Good evening, Senator. My name is Ryan Emmerich. I'm from North Reading, Massachusetts. And I have a question for you on the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act.
Yes.
Or H.R. 38.
Why don't you explain it so everyone knows what it is?
Sure. So H.R. 38 amends the federal criminal code to allow qualified individuals to conceal carry handguns over state borders. So if you're a Massachusetts resident, let's say, you have your concealed carry license, you can travel freely between any state with that handgun on you. Now, while I'm from Massachusetts, while I lean to the left on many issues, I am a strong believer in the Second Amendment, and I do believe that it's imperative that you uphold that right when we're traveling across state borders for self-defense reasons. One of the counter-arguments I hear to this act is that states with less strict laws, such as Vermont, constitutional carry states, it would be easy for them to come into a state like Massachusetts, which has more regulation. And I think it's a pretty fair argument, but I also, a counter to that counter-argument would be that criminals inherently disregard the law. And so that somebody in Vermont already who wants to cause harm to somebody in Massachusetts could obtain a weapon already and come to Massachusetts. So I am okay. I mean, I'll acquiesce to the original counter-argument that it's easier for somebody from a less strict regulated state to come into a more strictly regulated state. So my question for you, I guess, Senator, is do you envision any type of version of this act or bill that you would support which would allow people with concealed carry licenses to travel freely between U.S. states?
Okay. So let me just try to re-explain it again. So the issue would be this. If Vermont had a law, or Maine had a law, that you could conceal your weapon and just be going anywhere and everywhere without anyone knowing that you had a concealed weapon, the new law, which the NRA wants to have passed, is it says to Massachusetts, which has a law which prohibits that it's okay now for the Maine person or the Vermont person to come around Massachusetts because it's legal in their state. And so from my perspective, again, as I said earlier, we have the toughest gun control laws. We've had a 60% reduction over the last 20 years in gun fatalities. The police in this room, they don't want people walking around here with guns from other states that are operating under those state laws and not under Massachusetts state laws, any more than they want silencers to be allowed to be put onto weapons, and they wouldn't even know where the bullet was coming from. They don't want a legalization of silencers either. So from my perspective, where I get the greatest kind of opposition to this is from the police. You know, they want to know what's going on in their city. You know, the mayor wants to make this the safest possible city. Mayor Cahill wants to make Beverly the safest possible city. So that's my perspective. I understand your Second Amendment argument, but again, in the Second Amendment, it's a well-regulated militia. And in our state, our police believe that they want to know who's got the gun, and they also don't want that gun to have a silencer on it. And those are the two bills which they were beginning to move through the Congress until Las Vegas. And I just think there'll be a hiatus, and they'll come back and they'll try to move it again. But I think it's contrary to what our law enforcement officials want to see happen. So okay, yeah, let them.
Sorry.
Nolan, yeah, please.
I just wanted the second part of the question answered. So I completely understand that point of view. If, let's say, the act was amended so that it was all the states had to agree on maybe some sort of new license that people could get bumped up to, that had maybe enhanced due diligence and similar, regulation as Massachusetts, would you agree to something like that?
Again, my job is to represent Massachusetts. We're a special place. That's why Representative Walsh ran again, so he could represent this great city of Peabody up in the state legislature. We're a special, special place. And so I think it's unlikely that the rest of the country, especially in, let's say, Iowa, Texas, would ever accept a Massachusetts standard. But if such a day ever occurred, then of course I would be willing to look at it. Okay, but I just don't think it's realistic to think that they would ever be able to escape this grip which the NRA has over the politics of too many states in the United States of America. So I'd be open-minded, but I just think the likelihood of that ever happening is very, very slim. Right over here.
Hi, my name is Carol Scanning, and I'm from Waltham, Massachusetts.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And my question is going back to the budget again that will be going back to the Senate. My concern is that the Republicans are trying to pass the budget with little attention as possible, like they did in the House. It went to the House last Thursday, had 4 hours of discussion, and was passed, and most people didn't even know that was happening. I've been trying to get the word out that it's going to the Senate, and they're probably going to try to do the same thing. They've been talking about repealing or getting rid of the filibuster and, of course, passing under reconciliation, so they only need 50 votes. How do we get the word out better? Because they're the masters of distraction. And while the nation is focusing on the gun tragedy and the hurricanes, they're quietly gutting our budget and trying to defund the health care, Medicare, Medicaid, and get rid of Head Start, among other things.
Okay. That's why I'm having a town meeting in Peabody tonight, so we can talk about this, all right? Because, again, all issues go through 3 phases: political education, political activation, political implementation. So in order to beat this abomination of a budget that they are proposing, just think about that, a $1.5 trillion cut in Medicare and Medicaid. It would destroy the medical system that we now have in our country, and a tax break that goes 80% to the top 1 percentile. So you're going to finance a tax break for the upper 1 percentile. If there's ever been a 1 percentile in American history that didn't need a tax break at this moment in time, it's this 1 percentile. They have done fantastically well over the last 10 years in our country. The income inequality is great, mainly because of the aggregation of the wealth near that upper 1 percentile. They do not need a tax break at the expense of the Medicare and Medicaid program in our country. So what we're going to have to do is keep repeating this over and over and over again so that we put razor blade political sharp edges on that issue so that anyone that would even contemplate voting for that tax break for the wealthy and getting the money by looting Medicare and Medicaid, which provides the health care for the middle class and the poor in our country, that there would be a big political price to pay. So that's what we're going to have to do, and that's what we always do in Massachusetts. This is not an ordinary place. We are not just ordinary people. This is the state where the American Revolution began. This is where the abolitionist movement began. This is where the suffragette movement began. This is where the Affordable Care Act revolution began. This is where the gay marriage revolution began. This is where the Freedom Riders went south from Boston Common in the 1960s. And this is where we're going to defeat this abomination of a budget in 2017 and 2018, because we are going to be activists. Over here.
Thank you for being here with us this evening. My name is Sister Ellen Debreu, and I'm a Sister of Notre Dame, and I've been working with Portuguese-speaking immigrants for over 35 years. I would like you to speak a bit about the possibility and the necessity of a clean DACA law and an extended DACA law which grants citizenship, a path to citizenship for these over 800,000 young people, and the possibility of a comprehensive immigration reform that also creates a path to citizenship.
Thank you. I had the School Sisters of Notre Dame at the Immaculate Conception Grammar School in Malden, Christina Pacheco right over here from Fall River, Portuguese. Okay, so here's what we have. We have 11 million people who are in the United States who are undocumented. Amongst them are 800,000 young people who were brought here by their parents and educated here in the United States of America. They were educated in all of the cities and towns which are represented here this evening. Little story. I went up to campaign for Hillary Clinton in October of last year. Kept going up to New Hampshire, bringing up my gang. I would give the speech to crowds like this. We got to go out and win. And every time I went up there, there was a girl, Isabel. And she had a look, you know, that special look that a young person can have, just so smart, so bright, so talented. You could just see it. So every time I went up, Isabel would be there. And so when Hillary lost, I said to my state director, I don't know her last name, but we're going to hire Isabel. I don't even find her in that whole campaign. So it's 2 weeks later. She's sitting in my office, and she tells me her story. And she's from Lawrence, the same as my father. Grew up in a triple-decker, same as my father. One of 5 kids, the same as my father. But she was brought here as a 6-year-old older sister, and the 3 younger ones were born here. Where are you from? Dominican Republic. How well did you do in school? Well, you know, I went to school in Lawrence, and then we didn't have a lot of money, so I went to Salem State University. I said, well, how'd you do, Isabel? She said, well, I was the commencement speaker last year. How did I know that? How did I know that about her? So I offered her a job, but it turns out that it would be illegal to hire her. I can't hire her. Is she going back to a country that she never really lived in? No. How are your 3 younger sisters going? Well, you know, pretty well, because I did well. They're all on full scholarship to Exeter Academy now. Is that the American story, huh? Hardworking people, immigrants. So we have to protect these 800,000. The president is now reneging on the promise which he made to Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. He's now saying that he wants a wall built, you know, as part of the deal. He wants to, you know, basically appease the far right wing. But the reality is, because my story is the same as most of your stories, it's all an immigrant story in our country, that these kids should definitely not go back. Of all of the 11 million, these are special kids. If we've educated them, it would be foolish not to take advantage of their incredible gifts and hard work. And on a comprehensive immigration bill for all 11 million people, it's time for us to get realistic and sit down with the Republicans and cut a deal where they have to get in line in order to become citizens, but they don't have to live in terror that there could come a knock on the door in the middle of the night. It's time for us to have a comprehensive immigration bill to once and for all resolve this issue in our country. And at the top of the list have to be these crown jewel DACA kids who represent the best of what our country in the 21st century represents. So thank you so much. Over here. Yes, sir?
Oh, hi. My name is John Hugo. I'm from Salem. And a common theme to the 5 issues that you outlined at the outset, obviously, is Donald Trump and the people he's appointed to his cabinet. Recently, there's been a number of public articles about his mental fitness, and there's a book published called The Dangerous Mind, I believe it is, by someone from MIT. And my question is there a mechanism, if he does indeed suffer from either a mental illness or a severe personality disorder or some combination thereof, to remove him?
First of all, the Immaculate Conception Grammar School, Malden Catholic, Boston College Law School, Irish Catholic boy the whole way. I married the dream, though. I married a Jewish doctor, and she's a psychiatrist, okay? And she was the chief of behavioral medicine at the National Institutes of Health when I met her 32 years ago. So there is actually a rule. It's called the Goldwater Rule, because a lot of people did try to do a psychoanalysis of him back in 1964. And ultimately, there was just a decision made in that profession that they have to be very careful about at a distance without actually having done the psychiatric evaluation to be able to make a determination. I think that what we're faced with right now is someone who has views that unfortunately are shared by too many people in our country. Just too many people share his views on race, on guns, on health care, on who is entitled to full protection under the 14th Amendment of all the benefits of living in our country. And so if you're talking about impeachment, then the first thing you have to do is the investigation, and you have to do it thoroughly. And you have to make sure that you gather all the evidence. And that's one thing I am committed to. I'm committed to hitting that piñata until every bit of information about the Russian interference in our election is out on the street for the American people to see. And we cannot stop until every American knows what happened in 2016 in the compromise of our elections. Then we will be in a position where we can reach the second I after investigation. Then you can talk about impeachment. But first, you have to make sure that you have fully and comprehensively gotten out all of the information. And so far, it is happening on a bipartisan basis. And we want to continue to encourage the House and Senate Intelligence Committee to continue to proceed. And then we can allow our constitutional processes to work. So thank you, sir, so much for being here. Over here, yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Allison Ford. I'm from Marblehead. I have two questions, clarifications. What do you think the success of the bipartisan CHIP legislation that's going on right now, of that passing?
Yes.
And also, is it true that if Donald Trump declares war, for instance, on North Korea, there's no way of removing him from office if there's an active war going on? I just wonder if that's true.
Okay, good. So the first question is on CHIP, which is the Child Health Program, CH. So that's part of a 1998 budget agreement that was reached between Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton, and it ensures that every child in America has access to the health care which is needed. So we are right now negotiating with the Republicans to ensure that that program stays on the books and is fully funded. In the same way, we're also negotiating with them on community health centers in Lynn, but all the way up and down this congressional district. And I actually, in that one area, children and community health centers, I actually am pretty optimistic that we are going to be successful in putting together a bipartisan agreement to tease out the kids. In the same way we should tease out the DACA kids, to just tease out the kids in their health care. Please don't allow them to become a political football, and I think we have enough Republicans in order to accomplish that goal. On the second issue that you're talking about, right now, yes, the president can act unilaterally to launch nuclear weapons with no checks upon the president. He has a person who is with him, who carries the biscuit. It's the device which is used then to begin the process of beginning. a nuclear war. And right now there are no checks on him, and I do believe that we need checks on this president so that he cannot begin a nuclear war if we have not been attacked with nuclear weapons. We have the strongest Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines in the world, the most powerful military. We should not move to nuclear weapons unless there has been a participation, in my opinion, by the United States Congress in determining that a nuclear war has begun. Okay, so thank you for that. Appreciate it. Over here.
Sorry. Oh, sure.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Senator. I'm very concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Puerto Rico, and I'm even more concerned that Trump doesn't even pretend to care. What can be done in terms of permanently waiving the Jones Act and getting more care to our fellow Americans in Puerto Rico?
Okay, so I called the mayor of Puerto Rico 10 days ago so I could talk to her, Mayor Cruz, by the way, a 1984 graduate of Boston University, and she shares our values completely. And I told her that we here in Massachusetts support her 100%, that we want to ensure that they get the help which they need on that island. She was very unhappy with the president. That was on the day that the president had called the Puerto Ricans ingrates. Didn't call the people in Houston ingrates. Didn't call the people in Florida ingrates. They were calling for the same kind of help, but Puerto Ricans are ingrates if they're looking for help. So she was very angry, and so I promised her that we here in Massachusetts, by the way, we have the 5th largest Puerto Rican population in the United States here in Massachusetts. So it pretty much goes Florida, California, New York, New Jersey, then us. We're next. We have a huge population. And we, I think, have a responsibility to make sure that the billions of dollars which are going to go to Texas and to Florida are matched dollar for Puerto Rico, that they are given the help which they need. And there has been, there's been a waiver of the Jones Act for the first 10 days, and if it's necessary, then I think that we should consider a further extension of that, and we should probably begin to discuss the whole issue of Puerto Rico and how we can help it more, and that we can do have a discussion of the Jones Act in that larger context. But right now it's a public health emergency that they have, water, electricity, and we have to make sure that the billions of dollars are sent down there immediately, and that's another issue that we should work on a bipartisan basis. Why? There should not be a fight over this money. But as you know, many of the members from Texas did not vote for funding for the Hurricane Sandy victims, but they expected us to vote for the people in Houston, which we did. And now there's going to be a test of them whether or not they will now vote for the full funding for Puerto Rico. And my hope is that this paradox of what has now happened to them is something that informs their heart so that they do provide all that funding. So thank you, sir, for being here. Over here. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Good evening, Senator Markey. My name is Chinma Akanawa, and I'm a senior at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School. My question is, like you previously stated,
Can you move up the microphone a little bit more, Nolan? Yeah.
Gun deaths are down 60% since 1994 in Massachusetts. I was wondering, what are some of the methods and tactics that you and Senator Warren have successfully implemented in Massachusetts, and how are you working to integrate them into the Senate and in turn strengthen gun control on a national scale?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. Again, our gun fatality rate is the lowest in America. And it's because we put smart laws on the books. The same reason that we have the highest coverage for health care, because we put the smartest laws on the books, Romney Care. So our gun laws since 1994, from Bill Weld through all the Republican governors, with the Democratic legislature, have been put on the books on a bipartisan basis. They wouldn't have become the law if Republican governors didn't sign those laws that Democratic legislatures in a Democratic-controlled legislature wanted. So in each one of those instances, in terms of gun registration, disclosure of who you are, having to go to see the police chief, that's all kind of common sense. That's how guns should be regulated. When you're down in Washington, And you're dealing with the NRA. You're dealing with a president who goes to the NRA convention and promises them that he backs them 100% on everything that they want. It just creates this unnecessary, non-rational ability to be able to work on common sense issues. They say that any law creates a slippery slope that could lead to gun confiscation. Well, we're not talking about gun confiscation. I don't want to ban guns. I don't want to confiscate anyone's guns. But I do want to know who just bought that gun online, who just bought that gun in a gun show. And right now, we don't know. So for Elizabeth and I, and I'm sure Seth Moulton, our goal is to make sure that there is accountability, that we can, in fact, understand who has these guns. I've tried for the last 5 years to add to the Centers for Disease Control a $10 million research budget so that we can understand the linkage that exists between gun use and perhaps mental health. Let's study this issue. Why do we have the highest rates in the world? Why can we not even see country number 2 or 3? They're so far behind us. I can't even get the money to research at the CDC this public health emergency. 33,000 people died from opioids last year. 33,000 people died from gun deaths last year. They're both emergencies in our country. I cannot get the funding for that. I have a bill which says, you know, when you have an iPhone and you swipe your thumb across it, you know, well, why can't we have something like that for guns, where we actually fit the thumb to the gun, and if it's not your thumb on the gun, then no one else can use the gun. So I don't know what the number is, but it's a very high percentage of crimes in America are committed by stolen guns. That's what police are afraid of. Or children finding the gun and then accidentally hurting themselves. Well, what if the guns were just manufactured with your thumbprint on it? And if it wasn't your thumb, the gun cannot work. That's common sense. That's not banning the gun. It's just having common sense gun safety measures. So I keep having these press conferences with the police officials, the sheriffs, about these kind of guns. Sheriff, District Attorney Blodgett's giving me the thumbs up over here. It just makes sense that we would have laws like that, but not until we break the grip of the NRA. And I'm hoping that Las Vegas begins this effort to just once and for all, have the American people's voices heard. But thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Senator Markey, Jerry Halberstadt, it's a pleasure to see you again here in Peabody.
Thank you, sir.
As you know, I've, for the last few years, been working to do something about bullying of elderly.
Can you speak up, move the microphone in a little bit more?
I've been working on the issue of bullying of elderly and disabled people. And that's a small drop in the bucket. I've had we as a movement have had great success with the Massachusetts legislature, and I'd mention them, except there's too many to mention in the room already. Everybody from the North Shore was on board, and the legislature has pushed this ahead. But at the national level, bullying consists at its core of saying someone else is not a valued human being. We do not respect that person. We don't allow them their rights. What are we going to do about what's coming out of the White House, in which we disrespect and demean whole classes of people, and like the bullies, we say, get rid of them? How could we allow that? And I know that may not be a lawmaking issue, but it's a moral issue. Thank you.
It is a moral issue. And you know, when the president equates the Ku Klux Klan to the people who are opposing them with a moral equivalency, that sends a wrong message to the bad people. When the president uses his power not just to insult his political opponents, but to make fun of his own Secretary of State or a Republican who's the chairman of the he was calling, you know, I won't use the term today, talking about Senator Bob Corker, but he used a pejorative term to describe him today. It just gives permission to the worst people to be able to engage, almost an invitation to those people to engage in the same kind of conduct in their own families, in their own neighborhoods, in their own workplaces. So we all grew up thinking that the president, and I think most of us had JFK as our model, you know, for what a president should look like and sound like: cool, calm, collected, you know. Okay, the microphone quickly, Vanessa.
I'm old enough to remember Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, yeah. I can't go there, but I'll just give you, I'm going to just make a quick analogy because it's your point, and I'll just say this. When we were small, when I was a kid, and we were watching President Kennedy in the Cuban Missile Crisis, General Curtis LeMay and the others were saying, you got to bomb Cuba, Mr. President. And in the middle of it, our president was cool, calm, collected, detached. Let's be rational here. Let's make sure we don't make a mistake. Today, we have the generals surrounding the president being cool, calm, collected, detached. You should not be thinking about using nuclear weapons, Mr. President, and the president is the one who has to be controlled. But it sends a signal to children. It sends a signal to the bullies that it's a new era and they've been given permission. So honestly, again, it just comes back to us. We have to be the leaders. We have to conduct ourselves the way we want our country to be, and that's civilized. That's with respect for everyone, regardless of their race, their income, their intelligence, their place of origin. You treat everybody the same. You treat them with respect. We're all raised to be like that. And what he's doing is he's just creating, in my opinion, because I get it too, believe me, people, it's open season for people just to roll down the window, and you wouldn't even believe what some people yell out the window today that they would have never done so years ago. But I think you're right on the money, sir. It's a cultural war that they've declared, and we're going to be the winners. Here's the thing. Massachusetts is usually right, but too soon. So we got to wait for other people to catch up with us, okay? We're not just the Bay State, we're the brain state. So we already know this is wrong, right? And we're standing up sooner and more forcefully. That's why 180,000 people went to the Women's March on Boston Common. That's why 20,000 people showed up in Copley Square on the Muslim ban. That's why 10,000 people showed up at Faneuil Hall on the Affordable Care Act. We just have to be up and fighting for all those people who are the most vulnerable and in need of the most protection. Thank you for being here. Over here. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Senator Markey. My name is Kirsten Crow, and I'm a senior at Peabody High School and aspiring first woman president.
Excellent. Excellent. Excellent.
With the Trump presidency denying climate change and pulling out of the Paris Agreement, how do you and Senator Warren look to specifically combat a lack of scientific belief within the Senate?
Okay. And what year are you in?
I'm a senior.
You're a senior. Beautiful. We hope you're president. You know, we need another president from Massachusetts, so we hope you stay on that track. So I don't know if you saw what happened here today, but the president challenged Secretary of State Tillerson to an IQ test. See who's the highest IQ. But then, later on in the day, he showed that his climate IQ is 0. He then announced that they were going to pull out of the Clean Power Plan to reduce greenhouse gases. So it's how you are operationally that's important. So he just keeps making almost impossibly to believe the wrong decision on just about everything, including climate change. So what Senator Warren and I do every day is we try to stand up insistently and persistently and consistently to ensure that the science is in front of people so that they understand the consensus that we represent Massachusetts and that we are not going to back down. Now, they're not going to back down, but we are not going to back down either, because on that issue and on every other issue, there's one thing that separates us. We are right and they are wrong, okay? And so we are not going to accept this bogus science. I mean, sometimes you think that Donald Trump actually gets his science from Trump University. It's as bogus as a degree from Trump University. In fact, scientists are now saying that by the year 2030, for 200 days a year, Mar-a-Lago will be flooded by 2030. 200 days a year. And it will turn into Mar-a-Lagoon by 2030. And maybe that will draw his attention to this issue. But that's all we can really do. We believe, as I said earlier, that there's a massive blue-collar job creation revolution that's taking place that we can accelerate so that millions of people are installing wind and solar and other renewable technologies, energy efficiency technologies, that we can save all of creation by engaging in massive job creation in our country. And we really and truly believe that. So Elizabeth and I, we try to deliver that message every single day in the Senate. Mitch McConnell's from Kentucky. And he's coal country, and that's where Scott Pruitt from the EPA went today to make his decision, to Kentucky. But ultimately, you know, we're going to win. As Martin Luther King said, the arc of moral history is long, but it bends towards justice, but it also bends towards clean energy. It bends towards health care for all. It bends towards respect for every citizen in our country. It bends towards ensuring that we support equal access to opportunity for everyone, and we will win on climate change. And we're going to depend upon you signing your executive order as president, okay, to ensure that that becomes the law of our land. So thank you. Over here, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Laura Barrett-Gagas. I am from Topsfield. Last week I sent you a document that I created.
To what? Can you move the microphone up just
Last week I sent you a document that I created called the Principles of Respect. It is something that I am hoping to get to every member of Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives. I would like to see our government move towards a more respectful dialogue. This is based on something that I created for my school, for students to develop a community based on respect. So on that note, I'm sort of asking a question similar to what's been asked before, but it involves having the entire Congress work together for the good of this country. So my question is related to the news over the weekend. Senator Corker referred to the White House as an adult daycare and said that he was concerned that the president was going to say or tweet something that would lead to World War III. News outlets reported that that he is only saying what is being said in the halls of Congress. And Republican strategists on these news programs, when asked if the president was stable, answered no without hesitation. National security experts, when asked if the president was a national security risk, answered yes without hesitation. If this is being said throughout the halls of Congress, and the president is a national security risk, and possibly even unstable, why aren't more people speaking out? Why is Senator Corker's voice the only voice? This isn't a question about Democrats or Republicans. This is about the safety of the United States of America. We can't wait for Trump to launch a nuclear weapon before we act. Why isn't Congress moving to protect our country right now? We have the 25th Amendment.
So again, as I said earlier, with regard to the authorization for the use of military force in the Middle East, or with regard to the President Trump being able to use a nuclear weapon against the country when a nuclear weapon has not been used against us, I actually believe that it's time for Congress to pass laws so that Congress reinserts itself back into the political process. In the Constitution, it's the United States Congress that has the responsibility for declaring war. Declaring nuclear war is something that should actually involve the representatives of the American people. And so I'm agreeing with you 100%. And I think that what happened with John McCain, with his thumbs down, I think what happened with Senator Corker over the weekend, with a little bit of luck, is the beginning of a break with the Republican orthodoxy, with the support of Donald Trump, so that we can pick up the votes which we need in order to pass legislation which will put more constraints upon this president's ability to act. And that remains to be seen, because right now Bannon is out there raising money to threaten any Republican that does anything that is contrary to what President Trump wants to do. So they're in the middle of their own civil war right now, but I'm heartened by what John McCain did. I'm heartened by what Senator Corker did, and my hope is that we can move further in that direction by encouraging the better angels of the natures of Republican senators. So thank you so much for being here. Over here now? Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Senator. First of all, thank you for joining us here and giving us an opportunity for us to ask questions and have a conversation. I want to piggyback on the question on immigration, and I want to focus the question on the high-skilled immigrants in this country who come on the STEM fields with a dream to be successful in this country.
Yes.
You mentioned this numerous times in the past, that in Massachusetts, what we believe that what unites really here in the state and across the nation is the belief, the unshakable belief that no matter where you come from, no matter who you are, you have the opportunity to achieve your dream in this great nation. There are 1.5 million legal immigrants in this country who are stuck in the green card backlog issue at this time. They have to wait decades, sometimes 70 years per the latest calculation, to get the green card backlog clear for them. That's an average lifespan of an American at this time, which is too long of a time for a person to wait for the green card. So my question to you, Senator, really is that if you're aware of this green card backlog issue at this time, and do you support the bill which was introduced earlier this year, which is H.R. 392 and S. 281 by Representative Kevin Yoder, to remove the per-country cap for green cards, which will help eliminate this green card backlog for these highly skilled immigrants in the country? Thank you.
In what country are you from, sir?
I'm from India.
From India, okay. So I'm not familiar with, which representative did you say?
Kevin Yoder from Kansas City.
You know, I did serve in the House of Representatives for many years, but I'm in the Senate now, so I'm not as familiar with that bill as I could be. But I'll just step back and, in general, agree with you. So in addition to, let's just say this 11 million person undocumented immigrants into our country, the 800,000 DACA kids. Here's another interesting fact for you. Each year, 1 million people come legally to the United States and get put on a pathway to citizenship. What Donald Trump is now saying is that he wants to cut the number by 500,000. These are the legal people coming to our country. Now, here's the interesting thing. Massachusetts is the 15th largest country, 15th largest state in the country, but we've been number 6 for 30 years in a row in terms of legal immigration. So we're playing at like Florida's level in terms of legal immigration, meaning that in Mumbai or in Hong Kong or in Costa Rica or no matter where you are in the world, you have Massachusetts out on the kitchen table. I might want to go there. Now, who comes? Well, about 30% of all the companies in Massachusetts get started by immigrants. You look like somebody who might be thinking about starting up your own company yourself. So it's a big part of the economic engine which drives our country. It's what makes us great. It's this constant rejuvenation of our country by these people coming legally. And so, from my perspective, that has to be part of this comprehensive immigration bill. That should be on the table, as the sister said, the sister of Notre Dame said, you know, we need a comprehensive immigration bill. And that should be front and center. And that would be good for our economic growth if we did so. So, from my perspective, I know that when my grandparents got off the boat from Ireland, they probably never thought that their grandson would be a United States senator. But that's how our country works. People work hard, people study, they have a dream, they can make it in our country, no matter what it is. So I'm agreeing with you, and I would like to work with you if you want, and try to find a way that we can put your group together in an effort to have a comprehensive immigration bill. Thank you so much for being here, sir. Over here? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator.
And by the way, Here's what we're going to do. This was supposed to end at 7:30, so I'm going to go until 8 o'clock, but that's going to be just out of respect to everybody that's here. And then, you know, if you want, I can hang around for a while afterwards and talk to you individually. But so we'll just go for about 15 more minutes, and then we'll just call it a night. But again, we thank everybody who has stayed for the evening. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. My name is Jerome Canoni. I'm from Lynn. I'm originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa. I'm here to thank you for your leadership, you and Senator Warren, about the pressure you're putting on the official in the DRC Congo. The Congo is a country in Central Africa, a very rich country. I think everybody here has a cell phone. To make the cell phone, we need the coltan, and we have that in the Congo. We have uranium that the corrupt government sell to North Korea. And there's too many things happening since 1994. We lost 6 million. It's not 6,000. 6 million people in the Congo with ongoing war. Now there is a war between the government and his own people. We know that Ambassador Haley is going to go to the Congo this month. I don't know if Senator is going to reach out to her with a strong message for the corrupt government in the Congo. Thank you.
Thank you. So, the Congo has sent many, many highly educated people to our country because of the complete chaos that has existed in the country. So people are not able to maximize their God-given abilities. The existing president has been delaying having elections, has been thwarting the ability to have a truly democratic election so that the people of Congo can pick their own leaders. And so I have been part of an effort, thank you for being here, that the United States is constantly sending a message that we will impose sanctions upon the Congo leaders as individuals if they do not allow for elections to take place in a democratic way in their country. The president just keeps delaying and delaying. In fact, about 4 weeks ago, I had one of the presidential candidates come in to visit me down in Washington. We are not without a role in this. We played an unfortunate role in the history of Congo in the way in which we allowed the CIA to participate in the functioning of their government. So I am with you. I want to be as much help as I can be to you. I want to use the influence that I have, that the American people have, to put pressure on the Congo leadership to open it up so that the people can finally have a democracy which will allow for all of their people to be able to thrive. So thank you so much for being here. Yes, sir. Over here.
Yes, my name is Bob McClory. I'm a retired city worker. I disagree with a lot of things that you've said. Number one, I'd like to know why the legislature voted themselves an $18 million raise when we're in debt $400 million, number one. Number two, that's going to be $1 billion by the end of the fiscal year. And as far as undocumented immigrants, it costs the state $1.8 billion. $1.8 billion. And in the federal government, and all the states, it costs $135 billion, and they paid $19 billion in taxes. Why are we picking up the tab? And another thing, if the Japanese had not bombed us, had not bombed Pearl Harbor, we would have gotten into the war until perhaps 45 or 44, and right now it would be goose-stepping. Are we going to wait for them to have 10 missiles or 100 missiles before we do something about it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Number one, on the pay raise issue, I think you're talking about the state of Massachusetts, not the Congress. We haven't had a pay raise in, I think, 7 years in Washington. So that's a state issue, not a federal issue. On, again, the question of immigration, if we sent back 11 million immigrants right now, it would pretty much lead to a collapse of the economy in many parts of America. People who are picking fruit, people who are working at jobs that many people don't want. We would be sending back kids that have educations from colleges all across the country who would be more valuable here. You'd be doing, in many instances, favors for the countries that they would be going back to. My only point is that we should just try to start out where we're going to be forced to wind up. These 11 million people are not going back. Let's figure out what the system should be, including what this other gentleman was talking about with green cards and the higher educated part of the immigration story, and put it together in a package and then have a plan for the country moving forward. And on the issue of our first use of weapons against North Korea, I think that's what you're talking about. Oh. Can you put it?
If they fire a missile towards us and we shoot it down, that's when we should reciprocate with as much as what we have. And another thing is, why are the Democrats so upset about the possibility of the Russians interfering with our election when the Obama administration sent $350,000 over to Israel to fight against Menachem Begin being reelected?
I don't know about that. Story. I thought that he did get reelected, Menachem Begin, and then I think he didn't run for reelection voluntarily. So I think if I remember the story about Menachem Begin. Again, on the issue of the United States accidentally tripping into a war in Korea, accidentally having a miscalculation because of the paranoia which is induced in Kim, with a president who is tweeting at him as Kim starts to tweet back, any one of these actions could trigger a reaction that quickly then escalates into something that could be catastrophic. So my only point is that everything that we're doing should be carefully calibrated to elicit specific responses from the Kim regime, and it should be well thought out and coordinated across the entire administration. Right now, we have a president who is clearly not coordinating with his own Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, or Chief of Staff, and that could lead to a mistake which is made that could trigger an event that could lead to the deaths of millions of people. And that's the only point that I'm making. We should just be doing this in a rational way. Thank you, sir. Over here.
Senator, my name's David Charick. I'm originally from Chelsea, living in Salem now. I'm proud to say that I know you from your ice cream selling days. And I don't know if you're
When your father's a milkman, did you hear that? I drove the job you get it depends upon what your father did. So he drove a milk truck, so he got me a job driving an ice cream truck for 4 years. Worked my way through BC, so that's what he's referring to, yes.
I feel that the North Shore has been for the last 50 years underserved by rapid transit and rail. Are you on board with Congressman Moulton and the connection of the South Station with North Station and the improvement in rail that can be of major effect not only on the North Shore but on the South Shore as well? There's too much traffic in Boston now, and I'm familiar with that you're on board with the Infrastructure Committee, right. And I think there should be more focus on public transportation, whether it be rapid transit, rail, and the North Shore has been really underserved for the last 50 years.
No, thank you. Yes, Congressman Moulton and I have spoken extensively about this issue, and I support the connection of the North and South Station. I support the continued expansion up into Essex County of rapid transit. Seth and I agree upon that issue 100%. We've been partnered on it. Our staffs work together on that issue. I applaud him for his leadership and his work on that issue. And I want to continue towards that goal. And thank you for raising the issue, because I don't want it to sound as though, I despair for anything happening which is positive. So I'm on the infrastructure committee. And the president says he wants a $1 trillion infrastructure bill. I want a $1 trillion infrastructure bill. The president says he wants to have new bridges, new roads, new rapid transit, broadband into the most rural parts of the country, including our own state. I agree with him, I agree with him, I agree with him. So actually, just about 2 weeks ago, a little longer than that, Jim Inhofe, who is the senator from Oklahoma, came over to me. And he and I have been debating for many years about climate change. And he said to me, Eddie, I'm never going to be able to convince you of how wrong you are on climate change. And I said, no, Jim, I don't think you are. But here's what he said to me. I'm the lead guy on the infrastructure bill. I want to partner with you. I'm working on a bipartisan fashion to figure out how to tease that out from some of these other issues. So that's my hope, right? That on that one issue that we can find a way in which we're partnering, we're putting people to work. In the same way that we have blue-collar jobs up on roofs, you know, with solar, steel, out in the ocean with wind, we should be trying to find the same kind of way to create jobs for people that can build these things in our country the way they've always been able to build things in our country. That's where I think we should be coming from. This infrastructure issue is central to making people feel that they're a part of this evolution towards an even greater country in the future. So I thank you for raising the issue. I'm with you all the way. And if you want, just partner with my staff. Mark Gallagher, my state director, is over here. Please just talk to him about it, and I'd love to partner with you. So we're coming up to final 5 minutes or so, but we can take you over here, sir, please.
Alan Markey from Marblehead.
What's that last name?
Markey.
That's a good name.
Thanks. Thanks. My parents think so, too.
Is that M-A-R-K-E-Y?
Q-U-I-S.
Oh, Q-U-I-S.
Yes.
Ah.
So actually going right to what you were just talking about, the infrastructure, I feel like the meeting like this is great, but I think the facts and the figures and the conversation, for me anyway, leaves me a little numb and after the fact of, okay, so now what? And I think the Democratic Party has, for the most part, been letting the Republicans narrate what's going on. We're always playing defense. We're always responding and not being proactive. And when it comes to the infrastructure, rather than tell us, we agree with you, we agree with the Democrats, I think the Democrats should be going down to the rural South in the Republican territories and saying to the poor people in those areas, see that bridge? Yeah, I want to fix that. I want to fix that for you. I want to create jobs for you. I want to create jobs for your community. I want to do that for you. What are the Republicans doing for you? No, they're trying to cut taxes. They're trying to increase your taxes. They're trying to cut your welfare. I don't want to do that. I want to give to you. I'm a Democrat. I want to give to you. You're an American citizen. You may be a Republican, but I'm on your side. And rather than leaving it up to the Republicans to narrate to us, the Democratic Party should get on a little bus and go to all these areas that have been really tight white Republicans who think the liberals, the bad old liberals, are there to tell them how to think and how to feel rather than saying, I hear you. You're right. That should be fixed. That should be fixed. You need schools and pull in the people. You have us. This is easy. This is the easy work. The hard work is getting down to the Republican strongholds and changing their mind and erasing that notion of what the bad old left liberals we've been allowed to be identified as, and all we do is talk to each other. And that's not helping us. Really at all, it's not helping us.
Right. So that's just following up on the point that I was just making, where Jim Inhofe is the most conservative member of the United States Senate. And I don't know where a senator from Massachusetts would be on the spectrum, you know, down in Washington, but not close to being the most conservative. So that I had with Jim Inhofe is the conversation that you're talking about. It's how can we create a bridge between Oklahoma and Massachusetts? How can we say that we're going to tease out these issues? So in December of 2015, just 2 years ago, that's what we did on the committee. We said to ourselves, we're going to find a way of getting around all the bitterness, all the acrimony, all this partisan bickering, and we're going to pass a comprehensive transportation bill. And we're going to find the funding for it, too. And we're going to do it on a bipartisan basis. So I'm open-minded. We'll auction off some more spectrum so that more companies can get the spectrum, and we'll get another $25 or $30 billion this way. We'll get some more money over here. We'll get some more money over here. So it all piled up, and in the first week of December of 2015, on our committee, and then out on the floor of the Senate within the next week, we passed a bill that brought $5 billion back to Massachusetts. In other words, for Governor Baker, he gets $5 billion for the Blue Line, for bridges, for roads, for him to decide where he's going to use it. Louisiana got about $5 billion. So did Alabama. So did these other states. That's how we do it in a room. We sit down. We say, you decide what you want. We'll decide what we want. Our governor will decide. Your governor will decide. I don't earmark where the money goes. I don't decide it's going to be this project or that project. You leave it to your governor. There should not be a partisan way of looking at a bridge or a road or a broadband or building sustainable resiliency along the coastlines of Massachusetts against the Hurricane Sandy hitting us or another storm hitting Houston or Louisiana or Alabama. We should find a way where they get the money to protect themselves, we get the money to protect ourselves. We did it in 2015. Obama was president. The Republicans controlled the House and Senate. The Republicans now control the presidency, the House and the Senate. I want to work with them the way we did in 2015. I would like to get $25 billion that comes back to Massachusetts over the next 5 years. That will allow for these projects to happen here, and their projects can happen in their state as well without any interference by any politicians from Massachusetts. You're right on the money, sir, and I agree with you 100%, and that's what I'm working for. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Right over here. This will have to be the final question, and I apologize to you. I really do.
I'm Sam. I'm from Somerville. You touch on the right side of a lot of different issues. I appreciate that very much.
Can you move up the microphone, Vanessa? Yeah.
One thing that concerns me, however, is that a lot of the issues that we're dealing with are things that we could correct later, even if we got them wrong now. And there are other issues that we can't necessarily course correct on later. So things that pertain directly to how the people are represented in terms of voter suppression, even in more oblique ways like net neutrality and antitrust laws, I feel like those have kind of a deeper, more foundational impact on everything that happens, including dealing with the other issues. The most basic one, though, is just voters being heard. Is there any chance that we would be able to get a law passed that would have voting days be national holidays?
I support that. I think that the percentage of voters are going down and down and down. Families are working harder than they ever worked before. Making it easier for people to vote, as they do in many other countries, is something I think that we should be moving towards. If it includes moving it to a weekend day, if it includes making it a national holiday, then I would support it. Because obviously where democracy is heading in the wrong direction right now. We need more participation, not less. We need more people involved, not fewer. And the only way we're going to do that is by easing the pathway for people to register to vote as well. And if a national holiday is necessary in order to do it so that we can sanctify, as it should be, that one core value that we fought the American Revolution over, which is our ability to select our president uninterfered with by foreign governments or by anyone else within our country, then I think we should do it. And so I thank you for raising that issue. We're in a crisis of democracy right now in our country, and we're going to need, I think, new thinking like that if we're going to ever get out of it. So thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for coming out here to Peabody tonight. It's been a great night, and throughout my life, beginning with the construction of the Peabody Mall when I was 13 years old, this became a place where my mother was bringing us every single weekend, year after year. And so it has a special place in my heart, and so don't all of the rest of these surrounding communities. Again, we're a very special place, Massachusetts. We have to stand tall during this era. We have to be the North Star of truth in a sea of acrimony
and contention, which unfortunately is engulfing the country. And if we do it, we're going to come out on the other side. Massachusetts is usually right, but too soon for the rest of the country to finally embrace. But at the end of the day, we ultimately are the state that brings a set of core values and a sense of vision for what our country should be. And the people who live up here have always been at the forefront of that battle. It means the world to me that you came here tonight. Thank you all. If I can help you in any way, let me know in the months and years that go by. Thank you.